want to ask someone, how much money do you make? It's not everybody's comfortable to discuss it. So just wanted to put that out there. Unfortunately, people do get awkward around money, and you don't have to. And there's a few ways to prepare yourself. So this way you're not awkward and you don't have to worry about being awkward. So Rita, you're going to take care of time because I can just go on and on. So
I will.
So the first thing that I feel like is so important is that when you enter a marriage, you already have your ideas about your money. You grew up in a home. They spent money in the home. They, the way you grew up with the way your parents relate to money, you saw it, you lived it. If you worked before you got married, then you've made money. And how did you spend that money? So by the time you're already a married person, you already have your idea about money. And that's the first place of getting rid of awkwardness, is knowing, what do I think about money? How do I understand money? How do I relate to money? By asking yourself, not your spouse, asking yourself, what's my understanding of money? Am I very frugal? Do I just go impulse shopping? Do I like to save a lot and only spend what I need? What's my style? What's my relationship with money? And then once I'm aware, and we're going to use that word a lot tonight, being aware of my own financial style and how I understand and how I work with money, then I'm able to have a conversation about it because I know what I think. A note of caution: it's very easy to say, oh, you're a big huge spender. You always buy things we don't need. It's very easy to look at your spouse and just kind of blurt out what you think about your spouse's spending habits. And now you've already created a tough conversation or a little bit of a stickiness around the topic of money. So you don't want to tell your spouse what their awareness should be. You want to let yourself know, what is my awareness? And then the next step that you have is, now you could be honest, because you're willing to accept how you deal with money, how you understand money, how you relate to money. And then you're open to hear how your spouse relates to money. And now you can have a conversation that's really kind of open and honest, because you're sharing how you understand and your spouse is sharing how he or she understands.
Right.
And now talking about a regular conversation, because you're talking from yourself and not creating what the other person should think, feel, say, etc.
So let's say we had that awareness, we have that inner awareness about ourselves, and then we have some conversation with our significant other, and a little bit of the awkwardness is coming down, and we can talk a little bit about money. Not a lot, but a little in the beginning, and maybe over the years we can start talking more and more about the money as we get through certain obstacles, financial situations, and we learn from each other more and more. But in the beginning, we're going to talk about budget. Another question that we had in the poll, and it sounds like about 350 people answered the poll. And the question was, do you create a budget? And it was a 50-50 response of what is a budget? And of course I create a budget. So, can somebody go on mute? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Hi, it's Rita. Sorry, Rita, you have to ask everybody to mute themselves because it's a lot of background noise.
Yeah. All right, so the question is, what is a budget? How do I prepare a budget? It's a million-part question, right? What is a budget? How do I prepare a budget? What if I have different perspectives of what is important to spend money on than my spouse has? How do we create that budget together where we're at least somewhat in sync on where we're going to focus our spending attention?
Okay, so you're asking a very loaded question because it has so many parts to it.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. We'll take it slow, but we'll hopefully get through them all. I think that another thing that I want to bring out, which kind of relates, is that God did a wonderful thing. We do not start off our married lives as newlyweds, which, by the way, I want to just put out a disclaimer. I am still newlywed, 20 years and counting, but still newlywed. God did not start our married lives with kids in high school, with large families, and our expenses in the scheme of things is a lot smaller than a growing family. Like Sarita, I'm sure you can talk about, high school tuition and college, coming up, the amount of money that is. My daughter moved to her house. She bought a house and she moved yesterday. And she went to Target to buy everything and anything, because you have to do after you buy a house. And she tells me how much money she spent and how she spent so much money. And when I mentioned it to my husband, he started laughing, because that's what I spend in Target on a regular month without moving, because my family's a lot larger and a lot more advanced than her and her husband and her little baby. So we start off slow, and it's really a blessing, because we don't have to deal with all types of expenses. We're not paying tuition for our children yet. We're not paying a massive grocery bill or a very large house because we're small. So I want to put that in perspective for a minute. In the same sentence, I'm going to say that if you're having a hard time meeting your monthly expenses, that's still very stressful, regardless if they're smaller or not. I just want to recognize that. So I saw a great definition of a budget today, and I'm going to read it to you because I thought it was so fabulous. A budget is really a plan for managing your money. People hear the word budget and they totally freak out. Forget it. I'm never going to be able to buy anything that I want. My budget's never going to allow it. Forget it. The same pair of shoes I'm wearing today, I'm going to have to wear for the next 6 years. I will never be able to go out for dinner. And there's so much negative stigma around the word budget. But really, what is a budget? A budget is a plan for managing your money. Now, here's the trick. It's your money. You as a joint couple, it's your money. You manage it how it works for you. You manage it how it works for your lifestyle. So if date night is very important to you as a couple, you put it into your budget. And if you like to go on vacation for a week and a half every single year, you put it into your budget. And this way, you know that you're planning for it and it's there. A budget, I'll tell you what a budget is not. A budget is not a parent telling you, how dare you stay out after midnight and buy yourself an extra snack? And how dare you miss a payment on your credit card? And how dare you put so much money on it? That's not what a budget is. A budget is your guide for how you want to live your life and how you want to spend your money. One of the things I do.
It's so interesting that you say that, and I'll let you answer the rest of my questions after I cut you off. It's going to sound weird, but a budget, like you're saying, and as I felt personally, can be liberating. You actually sometimes don't even know how much money you have and how much you're spending and how much you may have additional to spend on those things that you want to spend on, but always thought money was tight. And of course, if money is tight, we definitely have to clamp down. But knowing that I have a little bit more than I actually thought I did, because I looked at my expenses to find out that I do have the money to spend on date night every week, or as often as I can, is very liberating. You go without any guilt anymore. You can totally enjoy the night because you had the money to spend on it.
Absolutely. And even if you don't know where you're going to find the money, but you now put it in your budget, so you're going to work it through until you find the money, that date night means a lot more, because you could actually enjoy it and you know that you're planning for it. So when you plan for something, you plan in your head also. Us women, we know that when we have to go out to a social event, we're thinking the whole day, okay, what should I wear? What should I wear? Should I wear this outfit? Should I wear that outfit? And we're making ourselves a little crazy in our heads. And we know that because we know we have to be here. So therefore, we're going to plan in other areas to make it work, which goes back to what should I wear? The same like you were saying, with a budget. If I know that I'm putting in money in my budget to go on a date night, that date night is going to count a little bit more. It's going to be a nicer date night, not because I'm going to go to a nicer venue per se, but because in my brain, I'm going to appreciate that date night so much more, because my budget allows me to have it, and my budget appreciates me, and I can appreciate my budget. You know, some of you know, I teach 12th grade business and finance. And when I was doing budgeting with them, my first year I taught, I asked this big LinkedIn platform, what's important about budgeting? And somebody wrote back a phenomenal line, which I share with my students. They wrote, if you don't tell your money where to go, your money tells you where it went. And I thought it was such a phenomenal line because it's true. How many of us put $100 in our pocket cash? And then when we want to think back what we did with it, we don't remember. Probably we filled up our car with gas, and it could be we picked up a coffee, and maybe we paid the cleaning lady or whatever, but we don't know where it went. Who remembers? So if we don't tell our money where to go, our money tells us where it went once it's gone already. And that's the beauty of a budget, which goes back to your point of it being so liberating. So,
and what if we don't agree? What if I sit down with my husband and I say I want to spend a little bit of cash on date night, and he wants to spend a little bit of cash on, I don't know, the rack of lamb that he wants to cook? You know, what happens when we disagree? I see my father cracking up because that's real.
I was going to say, if he's not spending the money on you, forget it. But I want to just go back for a minute, if that's okay, because I feel like when people want to write a budget, they don't even know how to start. And if we can just throw out some tips right now, just a very quick process of how to write a budget, and then we'll go on to, okay, what if we don't agree? And what if we don't know what we want? And what if we don't have the money? And we can go through all that. How does that sound?
Yeah, perfect.
So what are the factors of a budget? And I think that because budgeting is such a taboo topic, so often nobody even knows what does a budget even look like. So the first thing you want to do is you want to figure out how much money you make. They say in Masila, owed money is not income. You can't say, oh, the painter finished painting my house, I need to pay him $3,000. Somebody owes me $3,000. I'll take that money and pay the painter. Until you have it, you don't have it. So it's nice that someone owes you the money, but unless they're giving it to you right now, you cannot count that as income. So first you determine your income. Then you figure out your expenses. Now, how detailed do you want to go? That's up to each individual couple. And then you kind of categorize your expenses, because some of your expenses you can have every single month. Some of them you can only have once a year. I only buy things for Sukkot once a year. And matzah for Pesach, I'm only buying once a year. And some things I'm paying for every month, like health insurance. And maybe my car insurance, maybe I think some car insurances you only pay once a year. So once you track your expenses and you figure what they are, then you categorize them. After that, you see, okay, this is how much money I make. This is how much money I spend. How do they measure up? Let's compare it and see. And once you have all that information, you can take your budget. What's amazing and liberating about writing a budget is that when you write it, you could say, hey, wait, I didn't know we spend this much money on, I don't know, I'm making up. I'm going to use your example, Sarita, on rib steaks. I didn't know that. We don't really need to have that. Let's cut it down so we can put away money for vacation. And you're taking away what you don't want, which you didn't even know that you spent, and you're putting it to what you do want. And then, of course, you review. So how often do you review it? It's a personal choice between a couple. Some people do it once a month. Some people do it once every 2 months. Some people do it when the season changes. Everybody does it differently. But of course, if you have a big expense, like you have a baby, babies come with an expense, or you bought a house or something like that, or you got a big, huge raise at work and now you have much more income, go back and review your budget because you want to adjust it to reflect reality of what you have. Okay, so now comes the fun part of, well, what if I don't agree with my spouse and we really want different things? I think for that, we have to talk about money in a broader sense for a minute. If you were to take a poll of what are the biggest stressors in a marriage, money consistently comes out as number one, the biggest stressor in a marriage. Not only that, if you want to take it further, think about family feuds that happen over an inheritance. Now, this sibling is not talking to that sibling because this one got more money from that. Think about partners in business for years and they break up. What do they break up from? Usually it's a financial disagreement. So money is a huge stressor, and let's call a spade a spade. When you need to have that conversation about, I want this and you want that, it's not really different than anything else in a marriage. I want to have pizza for dinner and you want to have Chinese for dinner. I want to go to my parents for the holiday and you just want to stay home and sleep in your own bed. And this is something that comes up in our marriages all the time. However, here's the trick with finances, and it really does apply to other areas of marriage as well. As long as you're being honest about what you want and keeping it on you when you talk about it, you'll be fine, versus saying, well, it's not my fault that you're the one who always spends extra when we go to the grocery. Now your conversation's over. You're lost. You're done. There's no way that you're going to be able to come back to an amicable middle ground conversation, because now you just insulted. As long as you can say, you know what, honey, date night is really important to me. And I know that it stresses on our finances. We don't need to go out to eat. We can go for a walk to the park. But I need to know that we're not going to give up date night when we're going to revamp our finances. I have a sister. She's much younger than me. I think Sarita, you know this too. She goes on vacation every year for a week. And I asked her, I said, how do you afford that? She said, this is something that we have decided is very important to our marriage. She has 3 little children. They have an envelope. It sounds like it's old fashioned, but they have an envelope and they put away money in that envelope for the entire year. And I said to her, so how do you decide where to go? She said, based upon how much money is in that envelope, that's decides our destination. But it's something that we care about, and it's something that is important to us, and therefore we figured out a way to make sure that we can afford a week-long vacation. Sometimes it's 6 days, sometimes it's 10 days, but we can afford a significant break because we know that's important to our marriage. And that's really what happens when we disagree. As long as you can say, this is important to me, or I need this, or I want this, or I would really appreciate, and this is how I think we could afford it, your conversation will be maybe an intense conversation, but a pleasant conversation. The minute you start to say, you're the one who always causes this, or if you would have a better job, or if you would actually work out of that instead of staying home with the kids all day, now it's dissolved. And the smart thing to do would be to say, you know what, let's take a breather, calm down, and walk away. And I'm going to share something personal with everybody. Only I don't know what, I just know that my Zoom screen is telling me how many screens I have that I can't see. So I don't know how many people I'm sharing this with. But when you become a Masila coach, they make you do the Masila process. And I will be honest, my husband and I, many times in the very beginning stage, when you need to put out all your income and all your expenses, have said to each other, okay, let's stop before we really get upset. Take a break for about, a month, and then come back to it, because finances can be stressful. And that's okay as well. And it takes you right back to being honest about yourself and your needs and communicating that with your spouse. How's that for an answer?
Fantastic. I was going to ask you, and I think it's we covered it, but I'll ask it for completeness sake. If I want to go shopping, right, and I want to spend money and I want to do things, does it make sense for me to have a salary or an allowance or a number that I have, that I know every week I can spend this much money without asking my spouse? I have to take care of certain expectations, obligations, like do the grocery shopping or whatever. But then, within that money, I could do whatever I want. I don't have to ask for permission to spend or not spend. Is that a healthy thing? Is that not healthy? Again, I know it depends, is probably going to be the answer. But I think it's on a lot of our minds. How does salary allowance come into play?
I'm so glad you asked that, because it really is very key in a marriage. Everybody wants trust. Everybody wants to be trusted by their spouse. And it's super, super important to have that trust. So every spouse gets the ability to spend a certain amount of money without being drilled when you come back to the door. Why, how, what were you thinking? How could you do it? And as a couple, you agree upon a limit that you can spend and not have to give an exact accounting to. And it's for both spouses. And even if we want to say, okay, yes, we'll admit, us ladies, we tend to go out shopping and we find something that's beautiful, and we know maybe we shouldn't, but we do buy it anyway. Every spouse deserves that. I once heard something amazing where my friend says that, okay, now everything is electronic and done over, over the computer, so it doesn't sound as good. And for people who are very young, they might not appreciate it as much. But when you look at a credit card bill, that perforation, the top just tells you the total, and the bottom is the itemized, right? So he says the credit card companies, they knew exactly what they were doing. They understood how marriages work. As soon as the credit card bill comes, the wife splits on the perforation. The husband gets the top half. This is what you have to pay, honey. And he does not see the itemized expenses on everything you spent it on. And this way he can't get upset because he has no idea. He just knows this is what I have to pay. Top half for the husband, bottom half itemized for the wife, and everybody's happy. But yes, every partner deserves that respect and that room to go out and make a financial decision, obviously within reason, without having to give an exact accounting. And it's a basic respect, and it only enhances your marriage by being able to say, you know what, I'm happy you went out, and I know you know our finances, and I trust you.
Does that answer change if both spouses work, one spouse works, one spouse stays home? I'm hoping the answer is it doesn't change the answer one bit, but I wanted to say it out loud again for those of us on the call. You know, if there's dual income, single income, in terms of expectations of the amount of money that the individuals can spend.
So I think that's a fabulous question, and I commend you for not being worried to ask it, because it's a little bit like some people get like a little possessive, but I think it's so crucial, and I think it's so important. When you get married, whoever you are, you make a vow to share your lives together, and that's your finances as well. And hopefully you'll parent children together, and you'll share the joys of life and the sorrows of life all together. So what is different about finances, and whether or not a spouse stays home to be a parent at home or something like that, that's a choice that a couple makes. And some couples are super traditional. The man of the house goes out to work and, works all day, and the woman of the house stays home and takes care of the children and takes care of the house. And that's a very beautiful thing if that works for you in your marriage. But when it comes to the actual money, it's your house together. So it's your shared money together, regardless of whose name the paycheck comes in. And my kids laugh at me because when I get, like I've said before, everything is just direct deposit and all that. But in old-fashioned schools, they actually give you a paper check. If I would tell you how often I forget it and leave it in my bag, probably more often than not. And I get a check and I give it straight to my husband. Frankly, I don't want a bank. And he's happy to take care of the banking. Oh, God bless his soul. Please do the banking. And that's it. And that's what works for our dynamic, and that's what works for our marriage. And you know what? When I give him that check, he'll tell me thank you, because he knows I went out to work, I prepared the lessons, I kept with my students. I didn't just get the paycheck because I looked pretty that day. I worked for it, and he appreciates that. And that goes back to the values of everything within a marriage. You're joint, you're shared. And especially if you're newlywed, you're building. And one of the major foundations of building is trust. And that's how you trust each other, by saying these are our shared finances, and we trust each other to help each other, with that.
Does shared finances mean shared bank account?
So this, I don't know if you're like to answer so much, but it's really a personal choice. I think a good accountant is super valuable, because a good accountant is going to ask you about your lifestyle, about what you plan on doing in the future. And we'll talk about a vision and how to do that, but, and help you figure out what makes sense account-wise for your family. I also feel like I wanted to stick in here and say that as your family's circumstances change, and I don't mean it in a financial sense, I mean, as your family grows, your kids get bigger, you have more children, you move to a bigger home, you take on more jobs, you take on less jobs. As those things evolve, your needs change. And each family is going to be different. Some people want to make sure that they're making a bar mitzvah, they have that money that's not going to get touched, and they want to open up a separate, simcha account and put money in there and in that account. And both spouses know this money is not touchable. This is for our bar mitzvahs and our weddings, etc. Some people want to put in a retirement fund. They want to have money when they retire. Some people came into a marriage with a lot of money that they got from before the marriage, and they want to maybe put that away for savings, and they don't want to take that money, and they want to leave that in their account from before they're married and just not touch it and let it grow for when they're older. So really each family dynamic is different. And the reasons for the accounts can be different, and that's fine. If you find yourself not wanting your spouse to know that you created an account, or be hesitant to give your spouse access to an account, then I would say you got to take a step back and re-examine. What makes me nervous about giving my spouse access to this account? What am I hesitant about? What am I concerned? And then you can address those concerns instead of hiding, the account from your spouse.
One thing that I found hard these days, so we have, you have a bank account, and you have a bunch of bank accounts, however, you're going to manage your money. It used to be that you take a certain amount of money out of the bank a week and you kind of pay your bills, or you balance your checkbook and you pay your bills off of your checks. And there's kind of a single funnel of how the money is going out of your bank account. But today, there's like a million ways to spend money. There's Venmo and Quick Pay and cash and credit card and debit card and Apple Pay and probably a million other ways to spend money now. How do you keep track of where all the money is going, so if you're staying within your budget? Like, how do you just keep that accounting anymore?
So it's a good question. And again, the answer is really a personal one. I had a guy come into my house one night. He tells me that he has, I don't remember how he got into the conversation. He opens up his phone. He shows me a spreadsheet of like 7 different types of credit cards. And when he had it all on the spreadsheet, when it's due, how much interest each card charges, what the balance is. And I got dizzy just looking at it. I said, can I just ask you a question? Can you get rid of 5 out of 7 of these cards? He said to me, oh my gosh, I didn't think of that. And maybe it was rude. I started laughing, like, really, you didn't think of that? This is easier to keep track of this whole fancy spreadsheet and then just, get rid of your cards. And I think that it evolves. And I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but when you're newly married and you're figuring it all out, you're much more likely to lose a grip on it. And then as you kind of grow in your marriage, you put it back together and you figure out what works by making mistakes, which is okay to make the mistakes as long as you're aware. And you talk to people who've been there, done that, and they'll tell you, I don't use PayPal anymore. They'll tell you, I don't transfer money. They'll tell you different things because they've learned what works for them.
That's a great point. And I think that's something that we forget, is that a lot of people have been through the similar or the same money challenges and questions that we've had. And the same ways we talked about not being awkward with our spouses about the specifics of money, maybe in a more general way, there are friends or family that we can ask, in a general way. You may not want to talk about the specific amount of money that you're spending or you need to spend, but lean on them and say, did you have 7 credit cards? What did you do about it? And I think that a lot of people would have some good advice, because we've all been through those obstacles and learned lessons. And why do we have to learn again those same lessons? So. For sure.
And I will say that I don't envy our children who are growing up in a world that's just getting harder to manage, because everything is so instant and so interconnected that it is more of a challenge. Like, let's be honest about it. It is more of a challenge. And just like we figured it out, they'll also figure it out. And we'll probably like stare at them with wonder, how do you manage all this? But that'll be their, they'll know how to do it way better than we would if we got thrown into, this, as the world progresses at a dizzying speed. But yeah, that's a very good point, that ask people. And I'll be honest, it did take me time to ask my parents about different financial things, how they managed. They raised a very large family and they never had debt. And I wanted to just finally ask them, because it blew my mind. I was like, you know what, you're right, Rita. They have value to share with me. And I have to be silly not to take advantage of it.
Exactly. And we always talk about it, how, we have tips and tricks. Like me, we talked about this last talk. I have 2 bank accounts, right? No, I'm not going to tell you guys the bank account number, but I do have 2 bank accounts, right? One, I squirrel money into one bank account and I just make believe it doesn't exist. That's my savings for special occasions, trips, home improvements, things that are not part of my day-to-day life. I have that bank account, and I actually just don't even like look at it. And then I have my operational bank account, right? Where my paycheck goes in and my expenses and my bills go out of. And the way that I trick myself is I make sure that those expenses are always lower than my salary. So I always feel like I'm ahead of the game. And the things that I'm going to spend chunky money on, I take out of that other account. Now, it's totally a mind game. It's 100% a mind game. But it's a mind game that I do it myself. So I say, I always have enough money and more to spend on my expenses. But meanwhile, I just lowered my expenses by paying them out of the other account. But it's a mind game that I play with myself, right? And it might work for others and it might not. But it's a trick that unless we had that conversation a couple months ago, we would never have talked about. So right. I'm sure everybody on this call has other tricks to share with each other.
Yeah. And like you said, you don't have to share amount and you don't have to share who puts the money into it. But if you came across a tip that helps you with your finances, for sure, share it, because you don't know who else it'll help. That's for sure.
Hopefully simple question. Nothing's a simple question. What do you do with the wedding gifts? Get all these checks, right? Have the wedding, very exciting. Wake up the next day, open all the presents, right? And look at the checks. What do you do with all of that? What do you do with the money?
So it's a personal choice. I have a dear friend of mine. She's in her mid-30s. She's getting married end of July for the first time, and it's massive. Her groom wants to buy a house now. They're not young in their 20s anymore. They're really like, a lot of their friends have children who are getting close to marrying themselves. And they just want to start off with a house. That's expensive. Most newlyweds don't buy a house the minute they get married, but they're later on in life, they want to do that. That's probably what they're going to do with their wedding money, is put a down payment on a house as soon as they get married. That works for them. Some people want to live off it. They want to go to Israel and live there for 2-3 years. They want to take that money and live off it when they're living in Israel and start off over there. Some couples want to just kind of put it in savings and say, this is our rainy day fund. And right now we both work, we both make a good living, and we don't have any debt, and we want to keep it that way. And we know life won't always be that way. So let's put it in savings. The important part is to have that conversation. And even if you don't have it before the wedding, to have it after the wedding. And maybe you want to wait till Shabbat Brachot is over. And maybe, going back to what we just said, maybe you want to sit down with the set of parents and ask them for advice. Or maybe you want to sit down with a financial advisor or an accountant and ask them for advice based upon the details of your lifestyle. That money is a gift. Gifts are nice, and it really can do a lot for you when you use it at the right time. I know I can sit here and tell you stories about so many people who did amazing things with their wedding money years later. And some people who did amazing things with their wedding money right when they first got married. And the main thing is that both spouses are on the same page with it, and they're okay to do what they want to with that money.
Can you talk a little bit more about a rainy day fund? What is that? What do we think about that?
Sure. A friend of mine just told me this incredible thing. She decided she's going to do a little experiment. Okay, I'll admit, you have to be the type. Like when she told it to me, I couldn't stop laughing because she's so the type. But she took an envelope and she decided any cash that she's not going to use, she's going to put into this envelope and she's going to see what happens. So one week, her cleaning lady didn't come. She took that cash and she put it in the envelope. 1 week, she went shopping for groceries and she didn't spend as much as she usually spends. Maybe it was like right after a Chag, so she had an overflow of food in her house, and she put that cash in the envelope. Then it was her birthday, and her grandfather gave her birthday money, and she didn't know what she wanted to do with it, so she just put it in that envelope. I'm trying to remember how much time she said. I think in less than 3 months, she counted up the money. There was over $2,000 cash in that envelope, and she was shocked. She was like, "I never knew that we just keep the money in our pockets, and it just disappears. And here I put this money away and it's adding up so quickly that it's motivating me to keep doing it." That's a rainy day fund where she now has this extra money that she put away that she did not count on for anything else. And she now has this. Now, a rainy day fund can have a lot of different names. A rainy day fund can be for a rainy day, like when your boiler breaks or when somebody that you are close with gets engaged and they're getting married overseas and you want to buy tickets to go for the wedding. Or it could, that some people call it a rainy day fund. Some people call it a savings account, where they just want to put money and they want to save for whatever. And from that savings account, they'll take out for rainy days. They'll take out if they have, like, if they don't have enough for a chag or a simcha or any of these things. So it goes by a lot of needs. And people say, like, how am I going to save? I don't have enough. Pay yourself first. You get a check for, I'll make up $100. And you take off $5 and put it in that savings account first, it adds up so quickly, and probably you could spare the $5. And then if you get your paycheck and now you got $2,000, you can probably put $100 in that envelope. Sometimes you could put more, sometimes you could put less. And now, going back to technology, you can do it so easily. They can automatically just siphon off whatever amount of money you set into this account. And if you're tighter one month, so don't. My husband actually was one who taught me this trick. He built up each one of my children's accounts by putting $10 a month in each child's account. And now my bigger ones have a nice savings account that they have where he just put $10 a month for each child. And it could be when it came to, expensive times of the year, like Pesach or Sukkot, maybe that month he didn't put the $10 in. It was always an extra. And my son just told me he could buy me a house. He's 10. That's what he told me. He said, Mommy, I can buy you a house, because he saw an ad for a house that said 559, and then there was a period. $559,000. Well, he's 10. He says, Mommy, I have over $600 in my account, so I can buy you this house.
It's great.
And they know there's an account that and it doesn't break our bank, because it's so little. And here's the best part of it. It's money that I never, ever count on. When my husband gets his check, he never counts that money. It just goes right up before we even factor it into our budget. That's a savings account. And it doesn't have to break the bank. It doesn't have to break your budget. You can say the government just gave us money, right or wrong. If our grandchildren are going to be paying taxes for forever, maybe. But a lot of people took that money and put some of it in a savings account. You get an unexpected gift or a tax return. You put that in your savings account, and it really builds fast. I do want to also say that some people split it. Some people have a savings account and a rainy day account, and they're going to put, let's say, 2/3 and 1/3. So this way, if the oven breaks or whatever, they don't have to mess up their budget. They can pull out of the rainy day account. If they want to splurge and go on a big vacation, they can take it out of their savings account.
So we got a private question on the chat about that. So the question is, are there any apps that we can use for this kind of automated transfer into savings? And I'll just name a few that I know, and then if you can add on. I know that like at Bank of America, and I'm sure at other banks, they have where you can set it up to auto move a certain amount of money every month from your checking account to your savings account. So you don't even see it. It just transfers it to savings, and then it's parked away, and you pick as much money as you want to send from your checking to your savings account. Chase, I think, has what they call it like fraction spending or nesting, or so. There's some silly name that they came up with where you can set up that I want to save for a particular thing or save for whatever, and it'll automatically move a certain amount of money into your kind of specialized accounts. And then you can kind of dream big and say, okay, this account is for a vacation or for a car or for a house, and it'll automatically move the money per your direction. Of course, nobody ever moves money without telling you, but you can set it up to kind of, with the comments that I made about tricking myself, to kind of trick yourself into starting to save for things that you care about. There's also things like Acorn, I think, was another app where it starts taking like the change from different spending accounts that you have, and it moves it into this other account. So there's different apps out there in the market that will do like what you're saying, take 5% off of wherever you got the money and put it into the app. And then suddenly one day you can wake up and there's all this money there and you never even watched it grow. And it's like a big surprise. So, and then the other thing, and now I'm sounding like a financial planner, but if anybody works at a company that has things like 401k, that's a no-brainer, right? It's pre-tax money. You take it off the top. You never feel it. If the company matches, that's free money. So anybody that works at a company that has a 401k and is not putting money in that's a mistake, right? If you have the extra money to spare and it's pre-tax, so you never even realize that you had that money to begin with, take it 1%, 2%, 5%. It's a very small amount. And one day you wake up and you have a retirement savings, which when we're 20, we don't think about, but maybe when we're 40, we start thinking about. So those are other tricks. I don't know if you had any other to add.
Yeah, no, so I do it the same way you do it, where it comes, all my bank takes it off my check and puts it in the savings account. I do want to just add about the 401k. So there are companies that do not let you know that they offer a 401k. And if you ask, they'll admit that they have a plan. Because a lot of companies have to match and they don't really want to, and they're a little bit like hush hush about it. So if you suspect, even schools, I just found this out, I didn't know this myself, I just found this out from another Masila coach, even some schools have a 401k plan available, they just don't broadcast it. So if you want to go to your administrator or your boss and say, is there a 401k plan here available? You may be surprised to learn that they actually have, and they just never told you about it. And yeah, for sure take advantage of it, for sure.
So we have another question in the chat, and it's the tuition question. Tuition and mortgage, right? Those are the things that are one of the biggest expenses that any couple is going to go through. Thank God I have 2 down, 1 to go in terms of tuition. But how does a young couple even start thinking about those numbers? How do you start planning for it? How do you save for it? What do we do?
Well, first of all, don't think about it, because it means you have to have the baby and do the childbirth and then sleepless nights before you get to the tuition and all those type of things that come before. I find that when it comes to tuition, and it is a big scary number, if you really don't have it and you can't figure it out, most schools will work with you. They'll give you a scholarship. They'll let you pay it out slowly. They'll work with you. And the reason why I'm saying that is because one of the worst things you can do for yourself is just stress about it, because the way our brains work, when we stress about something, we lose the ability to be logical and plan it and think about it. So don't stress about it, because if push comes to shove where you cannot afford the full tuition, most schools will work with you, to make it happen. You also have, sometimes grandparents are happy to help out with that. There's many, many, many options. But I do want to say that my husband always says this: every child brings blessing. And sometimes that blessing comes out in finances. And there's no that you can know it now, but when you're up to that stage, you'll see it. And then again, it's how you budget. Some people, paying their tuition is very important to them. For some people, there's nothing more important than their child's education. And when they make their budget, that's expense number one. And maybe they'll forego a more lavish vacation, or maybe they'll forego vacation altogether. And for some people, they're not so careful about it, and it's the last thing in their budget. And granted, that doesn't make it harder to pay, because not only do you have that amount left over, but it goes back to how you budget. Maybe it means that you need to ask your boss for a raise. Maybe it means that, it's time to look for another job that offers you more benefits or more salaries. And I think we touched upon this a little bit earlier, that it's a blessing that our lives start off just as a couple, just the two of us. And the children come later and they grow up. Well, I know your brother always says they grow up so fast. They do grow up fast, but your bank account has time to keep up with them, and you have time to plan and go back to your budget and look at it again. And it kind of evolves, just like you evolve as a family and you evolve as a couple. This is actually funny, but after my husband and I, whenever we come in from a wedding, we look at each other and we say, oh, thank God we're not newly married anymore. I said, I'm still a newlywed. I'm just not newly married, because there's that certain bit that we figured out already simply through the blessing of time. And as you evolve, you as a person, you and your relationship with your spouse, you as a parent, you as an employee, you as with a career, all that, your budget evolves along with you and you figure it out.
So I think last question, because we're on the hour, I don't want to keep people too long. In terms of the budget, do we have templates, samples? Is there something we can get online to prepare a budget, to walk us through how to create a budget?
Sure, there's tons. You can just Google regular ways of budgeting, you know, the 30, 20, 50, there's all different methods. Missila does have, and I can email it to you if you want to, just so you can share it with everybody. Missila does have their own budgeting. They actually have it on paper and they actually have it online now. It's very comprehensive. If that scares you a little bit, then it might not be for you. And here's something else about doing a budget. There's tons of apps out there and tons of financial, you know, things you can get online, but it's like a living document of your finances. So if you found a budget that you mostly like, but there are some things that aren't perfect, go ahead and tweak it. It's yours. It's your money. It's your financial plan. It's your lifestyle. Go ahead and tweak it, and you don't have to follow it exactly as it says, because it's more important for it to work for you than to, you know, have all the boxes filled in.
Thank you so much. I'm sure I have a million more questions to ask, because money, it's just, there's no simple answer, right? We're all figuring this out together. And, you know, every single day, I'm sure we have a number of questions on how to spend money, how to save money, how to just react to other people's money. They're saving, I'm spending, they're spending, I'm saving. Everybody's living a different life. So hopefully to all of you that are on the call, we answered some of your questions. I'll just pause to see if anybody is, you know, brave enough to ask any questions live or wants to chat. Any final questions before we wrap?
Can I jump something in? Because I just feel like, especially that's so relevant for newlyweds. When you get married and you have you and your spouse and your friend and their spouse and you want to get together, not everybody is in the same financial category. Some people were in the same financial category when they got married. Then they got married. Maybe their finances went up. Maybe they went down. And not everyone is. And I don't want to take people's time. And there are ways to like work it through. And I just want to say something from both ends. Be cognizant of the fact that not everybody is in the same financial status as you. So when you invite a couple out, maybe choose to have it in, you know, have the share a cooked homemade dinner in someone's house. Maybe offer to go hang out at the beach. Maybe offer to go for a walk, especially if you know that your friend's finances are not the same as yours, to make them feel uncomfortable. And the same way, if your friends, if you are not able to match your friend's, you know, pleasures and finances, it's okay. And you can suggest things like, you know what, I so want to see you and I want to hang out. Why don't we just all chill in my place? And if you can be honest about it and gentle about it, and most of all, thoughtful about another couple's finances, your friendships will be greatly enhanced.
Amazing words. Yes. Yes. And that's at all levels of life. Newlyweds until, you know, until the end. So thank you so much. I saw another question about savings and spending. I think we talked about that a little bit, but yes, exactly. The budget, knowing how much we have, knowing what we have to spend our money on, knowing where we can have fun and spend on life, because at the end of the day, we're working. We have to have some fun. That's liberating to know where in the budget allows us to have some fun. Spending. I mean, that's not good, but saving, that's not good either, right? We gotta live and enjoy and spend time on ourselves and the ones that we love.
And also, like, you know, like if your budget's not allowing you right now to go down to Florida for a month, there's still lots of other fun things that you can do that don't have to cost you money. And don't forget to have fun in general, because that's just one of the ways that life just, you know, gives back its joy.
Okay. Thank you so much again, Deena. And we hope to talk to you soon. Yeah. Everybody on the call, please, you know, reach out to those at SBH, myself, whoever, if you have any more questions. We'd love to keep the conversation going.
Yeah, and thank you for inviting me, really. And everybody, thank you for listening.
Night.
So Rita, maybe if some people were uncomfortable to ask a question during the thing, they can maybe wait to the end and maybe we can stay on a couple of minutes and they can ask if they want.
Sure, we can hang out.
Can I give you the strip instead of the strip? Give me whatever you want to do.
It's like most people had dropped. Except my father, he wants to say hi to me, I'm sure. Martin, hi Martin.
His smile was the best. I love watching parents like just, you know, be so proud of their kids.
Oh, we have a last minute question. Wait, we have 2 last minute questions. Let me just see that they're still on. Saving for down payment. I think we talked about a little. What if you and your spouse don't agree on splitting the wedding gift?
Like what the wedding gift?
I don't know that the person that asked is still on. Oh, she is. Yeah. So yeah, what if you guys don't agree?
So I think that when you don't agree on something, as in any aspect in marriage, there needs to be compromise, and you have to give your spouse the ability and the time to explain why they want what they want, and you need to be willing to be open to listen to that, because maybe they have a good point. It doesn't mean you don't have a good point, but maybe you can see their logic, and all of a sudden it's not such a weird concept. Because it's not about, oh, you're disagreeing with me. It's what's your thought process? Why is this important to you? How do you think this is going to help us in the future? Can you see us using this in any other way? How confident are you with this choice? And then you kind of get to put all that out in the open in a non-threatening way. And it's easier to come to agree with your spouse when it's presented that way. Does that answer the question? I don't know if the person is still here wants to share more or say if it answered their question or not. It's a good introduction to marriage.
Yeah. Oh, and there's one more question. Is it smart to use the gift money to pay for the wedding?
Sometimes you don't have a choice. Sometimes you don't have a choice. And you know, if you have the money to pay it and you don't have to go into debt from the wedding, then good for you that you have the money. I know in certain circles in Israel, there's a drop box. And I had never seen this until I went to my sister-in-law's wedding. There's a drop box when you walk into the wedding, and everybody has to put in a certain, I don't know how they know how much money, but they have to put in, some people put in just enough to cover their food, I suppose. Some people give a more generous gift. And then the bride and groom sit afterwards and they go through it all and they take that money and they pay for the wedding. And that's just what's done in those circles. So if you're able to not start off your married life in debt and you have this gift money, it'll pay off the wedding. To me, I think that's a no-brainer. And don't worry, your finances will catch up. You'll get a good job. It doesn't mean this is how you're going to always be struggling for your whole married life at all.
All right, I think that's all the questions. So we'll call it a night. Yes. Thank you again so much.
It was a treat, Rita. Thank you for inviting me.
Night.
Good night.